Hello, everyone. This is Ray Cool. I'm CEO of PBSI Technology Solutions. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to review IT security training, the most important basics that all staff need to know. We continue to update content. Those of you, and thank you, there are many of you who regularly attend PBSI webinars. Everything we do is intended to educate. We're not trying to sell products and services in a forum like this. Hope everyone's doing okay during this COVID time. And in case you don't know this, if you have any issues with work at home, whether you're a PBSI client or not, we provide assistance for free for work at home during this COVID time. So thank you for joining. Thank you for the many of you who are long-term and new partners. Today's topic is security training. And I'm going to begin first with the latest information that we've learned primarily from content from our security partner KnowBe4, but we accumulate new information and update security training information regularly. I'll review updated information, how to keep my desktop secure if I'm an employee of an organization, password management guidelines, really important, some information about click protection. Many of you, if you're a PBSI client today and you have Office or Microsoft 365, you already have ATP click protection. We do this for every client. It's really important. I'll cover that, do a short demonstration, and review secure behavior principles. So the intent of this will be recorded, is being recorded, and we want to make this webinar recording available to each of you. If you want to distribute your clients, to employees or family members, you're welcome to do so, including the attachments that we'll send post-webinar. You're welcome to distribute those. So for those of you who are not already familiar with PBSI, we are blessed, and as CEO, I'm blessed to be able to say we have hundreds of clients in Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana in the area of business, nonprofit, healthcare, professional firms, lots of long-term relationships, and 75% of our staff have been with us for 10+ years. We have had no turnover in the last 2 years, so I'm very fortunate to be able to say that I know that excellent staff who have long-term experience help clients, and that's our objective. So beginning content today with how to understand URLs. So the URL is the full path that appears in a web link, and it's made up of 4 components. So this ends up being really quite important to understand this. The single most important thing that we could teach somebody in evaluating what is okay or not okay to click on is understanding what is the domain name. So the entire URL is made up of a protocol moniker, a host name, a domain name, and a resource path, possibly. So the makeup is the moniker HTTP or HTTPS followed by the double slashes. And there are variations. It doesn't have to be HTTP or HTTPS, but that's something that all, and there may be different monikers. They aren't necessarily bad. So not a lot to pay attention to other than to understand before the double slashes is the moniker. Then the host name, which frequently is www. The important thing for us to know, and in this slide and all other slides in this presentation, we've been very intentional to use yellow highlighting only for domain names. So the DNS domain name is what follows the first period and ends before the first slash, single slash. That's the domain. If every one of our staff learns how to recognize this one thing, we'll save ourselves a lot of security headaches. So the host name follows the moniker, and then comes the domain name. And the domain name in this example is example.com. Then after the slash comes resource path name and resources, which can be anything. So subpath, resource name. There are a variety of things that can occur there, and it's very difficult to evaluate, even with a good email, whether that path might be complete. So our key is going to be understanding and recognizing the domain name in each example. So In this case, the domain name is example.com.domain.com. It's not example.com. In this example, the domain name is example.com because of the slash. So this is just key to understand that only up until that first single slash is the domain name. So that's a basic. We're going to talk about some common URL phishing techniques. So how are URLs used in more and more? I mean, this URL phishing scams are not new in any sense, but the bad guys are getting more clever and doing more and more to obfuscate. We've got some pretty good examples today. So a bait and switch domain is something that looks like it's coming from a trusted source like Microsoft, but this domain name is not Microsoft.com. All of this stuff is included in the, all of this is included in the domain name in this example. Lookalike domains. So security-paypal.com-centers.com is not paypal.com, and it's not security.paypal.com. Misspellings and lookalike domains. So in this case, this email came from, no it didn't, Microsoft Outlook. It's from service.out1ook.com. So just looking at the little things are important. Another example is a domain mismatch where there's a slash that precedes microsoftonline.com, but no, the domain is devopsnw.com. Slight misspellings. Here's one. It took me a moment to look, well, what's wrong with that? But there's two L's in LinkedIn in this example. So another thing that isn't related to the domain, but it's useful to know possibly, is that what follows, in this case, this domain is en.wikipedia and freeformmatter.com, but what follows might be shortened. So percent encoding, or there are various things that are used here, some legit, some not. But if there's any concern with what follows the slash, it can be a signal, but it can be hard to evaluate. So if we just stick with understanding the URL, that's really the most helpful for most people. So hopefully that is information that we can all use, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but really important to know how to evaluate the sender. So I'm going to move on to basics of keeping my desktop or laptop secure. And this includes home devices, by the way. We find one of the most time-consuming things we've been doing in this COVID time is helping clients to secure their home PCs so that a home PC doesn't have a keylogger that follows into the work PC. And so principles of keeping my desktop secure: keep my passwords private and unique. Passwords are so important. Don't reuse passwords. If you have a normal password, change it, stop using it. I know it's very difficult, easier said than done. Another key is don't use the same passwords on work and personal sites. I already said don't use the same passwords, but if you must, keep any passwords you use on a work site separate, because I didn't discuss this today, but frequently you've heard me talk about the fact that there are billions of exposed passwords and email addresses exposed on the dark web. And by the way, we'll do a free search for any of you. If you're listening to this and you don't know what a free dark web search is, just ask us. We will look for your domain and find all compromised is very importantly available now for anyone to use. Bad guys can buy that combination of email address and password and try it on any site in the world. Banks, credit card companies. So if you've used the same password on more than one site, then you've put yourself at risk. And if you've used the same password that's exposed on a home site, now you've exposed your work in the same way. So web links and attachments, pretty well understood. Do not click on links or open attachments in emails unless you know and trust the source. Pay attention to solicited versus unsolicited email. I'll talk a bit more about this policy that all of us should have in place, I believe, as organizations. No software downloads of any kind on my PC or laptop, work laptop, unless carefully considered and approved by my manager. And the manager says, well, how do I know what to approve? And the basic answer is, don't approve unless it's work-related, important. Screensavers, weather apps, coupon sites, all kinds of really dangerous sites, but basically the safe way to keep our PCs productive and safe is no software downloads unless approved. For all of you who are PBSI clients, we keep your patches up to date on all of your Windows apps and browsers on all of your PCs and laptops that are secured by PBSI. This is something that most organizations set to update automatically, but it's really important because once a patch of a piece of Windows software is released, the patching vendor, whether it's Microsoft, Apple, or whoever, releases to the universe, the good guys and the bad guys, what they fixed, which opens the door for hackers to begin probing older versions of that software, and they do. So having the security patches updated on a timely basis is important. So we handle this if you're a PBSI client for you, but it's very important. So employees hopefully don't really have to get involved in this unless you don't have somebody like PBSI managing your patches. Power settings, one thing that's important, we recommend leaving power on to devices, but if you have an alternate way to make sure your PC is secure, instead of turning it off, turn your screen off and set a screensaver that requires a password. It's simple to do. We have a handout that you can ask for about how to set PCs for safety and security. It includes screensaver settings. And keep the power on because updates take place at night most frequently, and you don't want to have to wait for your PC to come back to you in the morning when you turn it on and have lost some software updates that should have already taken place. So one other key here, email is not secure. Anything we send by email, whether it's from Outlook, Gmail, whatever email source, there's no such thing as an email product that by itself sends email securely. Once traffic goes out through the internet, it's evaluatable. That's how NSA and other governments are able to, and Google for that matter, are able to search emails for various things that they look for. So the important protection is don't send protected information. Anything that includes a name in combination with a social security number, credit card number, date of birth, HIPAA information, procedure codes, diagnosis codes, and so forth. None of us are permitted. We're in violation of HIPAA and other certifying bodies if we do so. So there is a way to secure that. You can encrypt an email, but don't do it unless it's encrypted. And if you want to know how to encrypt emails and what tools are available, just let us know. It's not expensive to do that, but unless email's encrypted, you can't send that information. And then we find that in most organizations, many organizations, there is a shared files environment where employees can store files on a centralized area, whether it's in the cloud or on a server, where that server or that cloud facility is backed up. Fine. However, we also see that it's so frequently common, and there may be many of us listening who violate this knowingly, and you have employees who may violate this knowingly or unknowingly, where files in fact are stored on our desktop or they're stored on our C drive, and those files aren't being backed up. So the key here is that each employee needs to know, I'm responsible to make sure the documents that I store are backed up. And if that goes on the server, then fine, it's not my issue. But if it goes on my PC, on my desktop, or my C drive, I'm responsible to my organization. Don't assume somebody else has it handled. So just make sure files are backed up. Okay, that's the basics of securing my desktop. So a short summary of password. We do entire webinars on this topic or an entire webinar, how to manage passwords. So this is a short summary, but the essential ideas are: don't use duplicate or normal passwords. And an idea here that I use personally, and is an idea that might work for many of you, is you can store passwords even unsecurely, for example, in an Outlook contact, a list of passwords, as long as you never store the password itself. So I have something I call normal 8. It's not even 8 characters long. But I know what those characters are, and so I'll make a note on target.com or dell.com that my password is normal 8, cap first, add some numbers. I then put some information that changes normal 8. That's never stored anyplace, but it allows me to store something I can remember without actually ever storing my password insecurely. So that's an idea. I'm not sure if I made that perfectly clear, but reach out to me if you have questions, because it's usable. I mentioned don't reuse work and personal passwords. Enable two-factor authentication. So a couple of you in your responses prior to this webinar asked me to emphasize this. We recommend two-factor authentication for all cases where it's enabled. So all banks offer two-factor authentication. We recommend this strongly for anybody using Microsoft Office. And two-factor authentication, most of us know, is using a password in combination with a different authentication factor. Sometimes it's a text, sometimes it's an authenticator app, like Microsoft has an authenticator app, Google has one. And the point is, generally, you need a mobile device for your second authentication factor. And it's a bit of a hassle, but it certainly is useful. It basically ensures that somebody can't steal your login and password and use it on a different device unless they have your mobile device also in their possession. So nothing's perfect, but it's important. If you want to find out if your passwords have been compromised, so if you know there are issues that need to be resolved with compromised passwords, let us know. We'll do a search for free. And the gold standard here, I use LastPass. I've used Dashlane in the past. Recommend using a password manager that stores all of your passwords in a safe place, which eliminates the need for this normal 8 stuff. And there are other benefits to using a password manager. They're, in a lot of cases, free. It's a good idea. Okay, password management, hopefully that helps. A review of email security fundamentals, and we're coming up to conclusion. So email security, there's a lot to this. This is a summary, but there are 5 basic principles. One is, and very importantly, understand the difference between solicited and unsolicited email. So I receive an email from Ray at PBSI. If that's a webinar invitation that you're expecting, you can consider it unsolicited, and it's probably safe to consider it unsolicited, but it's not unexpected. But if I receive an email from Ray at PBSI with an invoice attached, well, wait a minute, Ray doesn't usually do that, and I didn't ask for it. If it's unsolicited, you just need to respect that it could be sent on behalf of that person, but not really that person. If Ray's email is compromised and you receive one from, quote, Ray that isn't really him, I don't like to talk about myself in the third person, but in this case I am. Just understand that if it's not requested, it needs to be looked at differently. If you send someone a request for information and they reply to you, that's solicited. Doesn't mean that the reply is not problematic, but it would be very rare if you've initiated a connection with somebody for the reply to be a scam or problematic. So even if you know the sender, is there anything usual about this email? So that's the first litmus test. And then the basic thing, antenna up all the time. Does anything seem amiss? Hover over the email address. Now we've learned how to identify what components of an address mean something. For time of day, recipient list, brief content, out of character, if you get a text or an email from somebody and it just has a link and thought you'd be interested, you pretty much know that that person email's been hacked, and it's not really from them. The spellings, grammar mistakes, phrasing, colors, formatting, font variations, these are things that just can give us clues that an email might be amiss. 3, don't get your news from email. I've had some great examples where I received emails that looked like they were from Fox News or from CBS News with information that was very surprising to me. And I remember thinking, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't click on them, but it turned out that it truly was fake news. The United Airlines pilot, the day that, CEO, the day that a person was thrown off a United Airlines flight some years ago, I got an email that day that said the CEO had been fired. And I thought, oh, what do you know? Well, he didn't get fired. He never got fired. I don't know what happened after that, but had I clicked on that email, it would have delivered something bad to me. So if you want to get news, go to the news app, go to their website. Just don't click on an email. Same thing with social media. Just don't click on ads or forwards from your friends. Friends can be fooled. Friends can be scammed. Stay away from clicks on social media unless you're really, really careful. So anything that seems too good to be true, it's hard for me to imagine that people still send $300 gift card to Target or whatever, or $50 gift card to this, and think that somebody's going to believe that it's not a scam, but don't click on those. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. So one that is possibly new to some would be unsubscribe. I've learned not to use unsubscribe except in almost rare cases where I'm certain that I subscribed to this in the past with this vendor. So if I had a Macy's account and I got an email, yes, you can unsubscribe from Macy's.com, no problem. However, many of the bad guys know that you have to put something called unsubscribed at the bottom of the email, and all they're doing is they're looking for it to confirm that your email address is valid, and you'll make your problems worse, and they'll send your email addresses to other bad guys. So unsubscribing actually confirms you're really there, and in some cases can be used to initiate an attack. So instead, what I do in Outlook is I right-click, I choose junk and block sender. So that never communicates back to the sender that I've opted out of their list, but I no longer receive their emails. So instead of unsubscribe, consider marking them as junk. And then, which we talked about earlier, I won't recover the same information, know how to evaluate true versus fake URLs, and know to understand that it's after the first period and before the first slash. Okay. Other email caution steps, hovering over links, checking spelling, we talked about that. Never respond to confirmation or reset emails or texts. Instead, if you think that an account may have been compromised and you need to do a reset, go to the vendor's website directly. Key it in yourself. Don't copy and paste a link. And even if they know some information about you, because so frequently information has been stored out there, it's available out there on the internet, and we think if somebody knows my social security number or my credit card number, surely they must be trustworthy. Not a good bet. If you think a request is legitimate or might be, go to the vendor website. And if I'm uncertain, by the way, any PBSI client can forward an email to PBSI and say, is this okay? And to PBSI support at pbsitech.com. And we will treat it as a high priority because we know that you may be wondering if you should be clicking on an email. So if you want to forward, if you're a PBSI client, want to forward an email to support at pbsitech.com, somebody will evaluate that and reply back to you whether it's okay or not. Always better to be safe. And then just understanding that spoofs are so frequently related to current events, product releases, new Tesla products, time of year issues with tax season, or anything that's going on. As soon as there is a weather-related event, a hurricane, a disaster where some people are compromised, the bad guys will use that frequently the same day to send out requests to, if you want to help your friends in California who've been impacted by fires, donate here. Don't do that. It might be legitimate, so go to their website if you want to donate, but don't click in emails. And then the same thing with texts. Google or Apple or Microsoft has detected unusual activity. Oh my gosh, well, this is a common, increasingly common spoof by the bad guys to being aware, as they are, that people have a heightened sense of concern about security, telling people that, or if a bad guy communicates to me that, hey, your account's been compromised, it's a way to arouse interest, and just don't click. And by the way, if you get an email that says, hey, we have this exposed password and we're going to expose you and we've got a video cam on you and any of that kind of thing, just delete. Do not respond. The exposure of passwords and email addresses on the internet has caused all kinds of scams. And the folks who are sending you an email to threaten you that you need to pay some money before they'll release all of your passwords or whatever, it's just a scam, delete. They won't do that. Of course, I can't guarantee that, but definitely you don't want to reply to an email like that. And if you have any concern you've made a mistake with a click, change your password. Straightforward, no sense taking risk. So phishing scams, short summary, hover over the URL. If anything looks unusual, stop. Know that we've learned us.ibm.com is not ibm.com, right? A lot of times, addressee specificity. This isn't a certain thing, but if I get an email that says Dear User, it's more likely to be a scam than if it says Dear Ray. Again, it's not a guarantee, but if the email says your messages couldn't be delivered or your messages couldn't be delivered to this email address, the lack of specificity is more likely to occur in a scam email that makes it hard for the recipient to evaluate. So what can we do to inform our staff? You can pass on information like this webinar or the attachments you'll receive after this webinar. At PBSI, we use KnowBe4 to train our staff, and we have a bunch of clients where KnowBe4 is used. KnowBe4 is excellent, excellent content, and it's inexpensive. You can do one-time education, but the recommended path there would be to spend $3 per month per employee and have unlimited access to phishing and training campaigns. It's excellent training material. Ask us if you'd like information. And then also for everybody with your email, you want to have advanced threat protection, ATP, that's the click protection on your email. I won't demonstrate this, but just know that the adding of that $2 a month per email address option is really important for making sure that a mistaken click on a link or an attachment in an email by an employee doesn't result in ransomware or malware. And of course, if you have been compromised, any account, change the password of that account immediately. So the click protection is basically really straightforward. If you see on my screen where I'm hovering this message, if I click on a bad link, because we have this in place at PBSI, and we have this link, this ATP in place, Microsoft, as soon as I click on a link or open an attachment in an email, sends that click out to a site called SafeLinks, the sandbox in the cloud where they explode, meaning fully vet everything that might have happened And if anything that happens would be bad, like delivering spam or malware or ransomware, then instead of receiving that bad thing, I simply get this message: website's been classified as malicious, close and go back. So it's averting a disaster, well worth $2 a month per email address. Anyone who's listening who's ever experienced a ransomware attack would gladly go back and spend $2 a month for any number of years in the past to have avoided that. So very useful option. And here's some basic information about KnowBe4 security training. I'm going to skip this, but just know that if you're interested in security training and phish testing, we're happy to help. Internet of Things, change your default passwords. If you have a refrigerator, thermostat, television, whatever, don't use the default passwords that the vendor provides, because otherwise all those things can be open to attack. Phone scams are increasingly common. If you see an incoming email where the first 3 or the first 6 numbers, area code, and first 3 numbers match, I never answer a number unless it's on my contact list anymore, and especially if the first 6 numbers match. Phishing scams, meaning phishing scams by phone, are unfortunately increasingly common, and unfortunately you all have probably seen that. Privacy settings on your PC. This is one where I'll just mention this picture is something that you can get to this place in your Microsoft security settings, and the default for Windows 10 is that privacy options, these 2 things are on, providing locally relevant web content and advertising information. The default is on. Change them to off, recommended. You can have them on if you want to, but it limits the information that's sent out from your PC. Don't use public Wi-Fi. Set my power PC to always stay on. And then just reviewing: passwords, patches, no downloads, email safety, phone call security, backups. These are things we've talked about, and we will send attachments to each registrant that include, as an employee, what's my role, what are the basics of what I need to do to keep my information safe, and then an updated how to evaluate dangerous emails. And with that, we're at 11:30. We're going to finish. I will stay and answer questions, but I want to thank you for your attendance. Hope everybody has a good day. You're welcome to log off.